Good evening. My name is Bartholomew Jones, and tonight's top stories. CRN handoff gone awry. Security Council documents declassified. Peace in our time. New Rainbow House reforms as bureaucracy is manifested. And finally, the JACJ Lytho crises. This is Communitas Regional News. Tonight, we begin with a special congratulations. It is the General Secretary Lytho-Czecnia's birthday today. We wish them a happy 19th and hope they live to see many more. It is with great regret that this next story is a tragedy. Rudy Visscher, former executive director of this very network, a man who, despite his noble intentions, is dead. He was assassinated live on air during CRN's final broadcast under his rule, after no less than 24 hours after the signing of his joint LCRE-CRN contract. The bullet struck just as he concluded his report. A single, clean shot from within this very studio. Emergency services were quick, but not quick enough. Rudy was declared dead at the scene. There will be no funeral. At the request of unnamed national authorities, Visscher's remains have been classified as state-sensitive and removed from public handing. We take no joy in death, but history rarely bends without a fracture, and from this violent moment, a course correction was born. Within hours of the attack, LCRE-aligned shareholders stepped in, editorial staff were dismissed, ownership transferred, licenses updated. CRN was reborn. Not hijacked, not coerced, but liberated. And now, our new editorial overseer, Mr. Aaron Schneider, whom we now bring to you directly.
Good evening, Communitas Regional News. I'm speaking to you today to invite you to the new revitalisation of the CRN. We're supporting this Lytho-Czecnian-owned business and carrying on its legacy of being a voice for the region. To achieve this, we will be firing with immediate effect any person who is not Lytho-Czecnian nationality. With regard to why I'm not currently with you as acting news anchor, I am unfortunately busy with some side projects, such as Gemini and Rienbach. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I will leave you in the more capable hands of Bartholomew Jones, my personal assistant, until we can hire a new news anchor. I hope that you join us for our future together for a united Communitas.
We remember Rudy not as a martyr, but as a man who stood at the crossroads of history and chose hesitation. And now, with new leadership, a renewed mission, and unwavering voice, CRN steps forward into its future, unshackled, unafraid, and unrestricted. And now, our next story. They told us that we were safe, that the wars had ended, but behind closed doors in 1967, while our cities still smouldered, our so-called allies were in smoke-filled rooms, playing power games over Lytho-Czechnia's ash. Tonight, the truth finally surfaces. The 1967 Security Council meeting transcripts, declassified just days ago, reveal the shocking reality of global diplomacy in the wake of Umbrathor's nuclear strikes on our soil. Seated at the table were 12 official member states: Brücke, Communitarian states, Friesland, JACJ, Lytho-Czechnia, Mentul Igalu, Nisat, Rawatna, Surrey Batar, Separatist Council, Sith Order, and Vikerund. Observers included Umbrathor, the very nation who had unleashed atomic hellfire, and Konrad Pathonik. And while the blood of our people was still fresh in the streets, what did the world powers do? They negotiated, they debated veto rights, they cut deals. The biggest shock: communitarian states, supposedly neutral champions of peace, had only just joined the Security Council, and immediately began threatening a foundation of global defence, demanding the dissolution of the International Defence Committee. This committee, quietly composed of Nisat, Brücke, Vikerund, and ourselves, is Lytho-Czechnia's only guarantee that no nuclear weapons would ever be created between them without full mutual consent. They called it secretive, we called it necessary. In a deft diplomatic manoeuvre, Lytho-Czechnia traded the survival of that committee for something far more powerful: a sixth veto seat. Communitarian states got their chair at the table, but we kept our hands on the launch keys. Aid was pledged by some. Communitarian states, Rwanda, Connaught, Pathonic, and even JACJ offered support for reconstruction. Words, donations, peace talks. But when it came time for action, the final resolution, watered down, sanitized, passed unanimously. No punishment for Umbrathor, no real justice, just more rules for the victims. Let the record show. In 1967, we did not beg for mercy. We negotiated control. We played their game, and we lost. They dropped their bombs, and we may have responded with diplomacy so sharp it cut through global consensus like a blade. But there was no effect, no militarization for Lytho-Czechnian defense, no punishments for Umbrathor, not even a guarantee that this issue was even resolvable. Some call the Council's decision a diplomatic miracle. We at CRN call it what it was: a calculated survival gambit by Lytho-Czechnia, and a warning that the world may pretend to help, but it only listens when you hold a seat of power. Our next story for tonight is on the recent government reforms. We will expose the glittery disaster that is the so-called Rainbow House, a government experiment that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that throwing together colours and calling it governance is no substitute for structure, sanity, or even basic communication. Let's rewind to February 24th, 2025, the day that formerly semi-functional Red House decided to throw itself into a kaleidoscopic tailspin and rebrand itself as the Rainbow House, a rebrand that was supposed to signify unity, progress, and inclusivity. Instead, it's given us confusion, chaos, and cartoon politics. Before the so-called restructuring, only 4 people were actually doing anything, and let's be honest, even that's generous. The General Secretary, Lytho-Czechnia, World Assembly Delegate, JACJ, and the overstretched Rwanda playing double duty as External Secretary and Public Safety Officer, and the forgotten cartographer, Pimentel Egelwi. That's it. The rest? Ghost towns with colour-coded names. Blue House Senate, never formed. Pink House Roleplay Council, 2 lonely souls twiddling their thumbs. Greenhouse WA Council, just JACJ yet again, a one-man parliament. But then comes the most ridiculous chain of events since the last time a committee tried to rename Tuesdays. External Secretary Rwanda brings a new player, communitarian states, with all the grace of someone sneaking a side character to a play that's already in its final act. That sets off alarm bells for the newly elected Lytho-Czechnia, who suddenly remembered that they don't have an internal secretary, a role required by their own charter. Nice timing. Cue the clown car. JACJ offers the internal secretary spot to Vikerund. Lytho-Czechnia, without checking, offers it to Western Union. Lytho-Czechnia then caves at JCJ and gives Vikerund the role, but instead of correcting the mistake like a grown-up, Lytho-Czechnia creates 2 new positions out of thin air: Assistant Internal Secretary for Western Union and Assistant External Secretary for Rwanda. That's right, folks, because when you make a mess, why clean it up when you can just add more job titles? Then, in a desperate bid to stop the bleeding, Lytho-Czechnia and JACJ decide to merge all the coloured houses into one bland, bureaucratic blob, the Rainbow House, because nothing says we've lost control quite like abandoning your entire political structure overnight. But wait, it gets better. The cartographer, yes, the guy drawing imaginary maps, disappears. Lytho-Czecnia and JCJ scramble to appoint Friesland as a replacement, and then forget to tell him. When Pimentel finally logs back in, they throw a tantrum and demand their old job title back. Leadership folds instantly, giving Friesland a new role, assistant cartographer, because we need assistants for cartography now. The cherry on this clown cake, Rwakna recently resigned as assistant external secretary. Who swoops in? Western Union, the same Western Union who got shuffled into a make-believe assistant role after being passed over earlier. Apparently, if you wait long enough in the Rainbow House, everyone gets a turn. It's like preschool with job titles. Folks, this isn't governance. This is bureaucratic musical chairs with no music and no chairs. The Rainbow House isn't a beacon of progressive governance. It's a cautionary tale, a glitter-covered graveyard of ambition, where accountability goes to die and new titles are handed out like participation trophies. We'll keep watching, because someone has to. But if this is the future of government, I suggest we all invest in bunkers and prayer beads. Our final words of advice: stay sharp, stay free, and stay far away from Rainbow House. Our next story is a historical piece. In the charred pages of recent history, few stories burn as bright or as bitter as the twin crises between Nisat and JACJ, a tale of weak diplomacy, reactionary fear, imperial arrogance, and one glorious moment of truth that cost us dearly. Let's take it back to 1967, not yet a year after the civil war that tore Nisat and Brücke apart like a rotten flag. Peace was barely stitched together, but already the old wounds were opening again. Nisat and Brücke, so recently enemies, had begun whispering about reunification. Dangerous talk. For JACJ, whose border sat uncomfortably close, this wasn't diplomacy. This was a potential military colossus assembling at their doorstep. Their response: a rushed and clumsy build-up of forces, and the kind of itchy trigger-finger paranoia that has historically led to catastrophe. The communitarian states, ever self-congratulatory, offered to host a mediation conference in the neutral city of Sedan. Lytho-Czecnia, in our generosity, agreed to help mediate. We sent our best and brightest, and that is where tragedy struck. An extremist, an individual linked, yes, to our LCRE, infiltrated the summit with the help of a local communitarian doomsday cult. The weapon? Firebombs. The target? Every hand that dared shake in weakness. They entered best strapped with crude explosives, and while their cry of "we all go together" didn't fully detonate the conference, it took one life. Bartholomew, my namesake, my colleague, a presidential assistant, a patriot, dead. Let us be clear. This was not a sanctioned attack. The LCRE leadership knew nothing of it, and yet, in the aftermath, Nisat and JACJ, instead of owning their failures or admitting their shared instability, united in outrage, not against the cult that armed the bomber, not against their own volatile border, but against us, against Lytho-Czecnia. They condemned the LCRE, vilified us for one man's actions, and when our constitution rightly shielded us from collective punishment, they seethed all the more. But history, like fire, spreads. Not long after, whispers returned. Nisat and Brücke again flirted with reunification. And this time, JACJ snapped. Their paranoia boiled over into fury. Diplomacy died. The mask fell. JACJ transitioned from a semi-constitutional state into a full-blown absolute monarchy, a throne built from the ashes of fear, an empire with no accountability, one man, one crown, zero restraint. The world reacted in horror. because of course they did. The self-styled peacemakers never like it when someone plays their own game better than them. Stefan Visscher, ever the liberal fence-sitter, mumbled about accountability, and yet LCRE leader Mr. Schneider saw it clearly. JACJ has taken a necessary step, but their leadership lacks the vision to properly wield this power. Her throne is only as strong as the spine behind it, and JACJ regrettably had Yolanda, a pseudo-monarch with more venom than vision. After a former Nissatian president, Mr. Sheriff, firebombed a JACJ building and fled across the border, she demanded his head, literally, in a public press conference she called for execution without trial. And that, apparently, was the last straw for the civil society class. Lytho-Czechnian journalist Mixkoba Lomzi reported live on the conference, only to be physically ejected by Lytho-Czechnian leadership after the world saw what justice under a crown really looks like. And in an unusually sharp move, Mr. Visscher fired off a statement decrying JACJ's death-first policy. In a world where justice is authoritarian and the courts are overruled is the day civil rights die. Eventually, after King Jamil returned from whatever hole royalty crawls into during a crisis, he silenced his own wife. Yes, silenced. And in her wake, a compromise emerged. Trials would be held in Nissat under JACJ law in order to achieve a death penalty which Nissat sorely lacked. And only if found guilty, the convicted would be shipped back to JACJ for execution. Justice by shuttle, fairness by ferry. The world calls it peace. We call it what it is, a joke. Prices ended in fire, a second in farce. One took my namesake, the other took the last shred of dignity JACJ ever had. And the world that still believes LCRE are the villains in this tale, I say this. We were right about Nissat. We were right about JACJ. And one day, the world will thank us for being willing to hold a match where everyone else clings to the candlelight. That's all for tonight, folks. We will see you next time on Communitas Regional News.